don't plan on having any work-life balance. You know, I and I've heard this from a lot of other startups and a lot of other small businesses. I think somebody fairly famous said that. I just it's I do have a couple of things that I dig my heels in about. My birthday is one of them. Christmas is one of them. Um, there's a couple others, but most of my social life revolves around going to conferences or networking events. And I work a lot of weekends. I work till 3 o'clock in the morning most of the time. It's that astrophysicist in me makes me a chronic night owl.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7 and 8 figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. You ever need help with yours? Just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Sandy Eulitt. And Sandy started her journey during high school as the computer revolution was just starting. Went off to college and started studying physics before moving over into engineering. And from there, went out and started selling computers. And then went back to school to finish up or to study on computer science and programming. And then from there, went to work for a bigger business. The dot-com bust came along, and so went back to school and studied, I think, astrophysics with airplanes, and worked in that industry for a while. And then, as further into her career, built an app for elderly or for older people or whatever the correct vernacular is, and then finished up the app and is launching that soon, just coming out of beta. So it should be a great journey to hear. And welcome on the podcast, Andy.
Thanks, Devin.
Hey, thank you for coming on. So, well, I just gave a quick overview to a much longer journey. So, why don't we rewind and unpack that a bit further? So, tell us a little bit about how your journey got started coming out of or in high school as the computer revolution was coming about.
Uh, just I did a research paper on the computer evolution my junior year of high school, and had decided I was definitely not going to do this as a career. My heart belonged to space and astronomy. Um, but Purdue being Purdue, insisted that you take some programming classes while you were a physics major or an electrical engineering technology major. And so that's really what kicked it off. I don't maybe I shouldn't admit this because it will be telling my age, but my first two programming classes were done on key punch cards. And I still, just for the nostalgia purpose of it, I looked them up on eBay a few years ago and I bought a stack of them, just because I liked having them around. They're great for grocery lists and to-do lists.
Well, fair enough. So you say, okay, have or some of that interest, went off to school, so you started, I think, or going down the road of stud or doing your studies, and then if I remember, and certainly correct me if I'm wrong, that you didn't end, or necessarily end up finishing that degree before going out in the working world, but maybe tell us or fill that in a little bit as to how things evolved or kind of the direction things went for you.
Um, I didn't really like electrical engineering technology, and I was not very happy at Purdue. There was just kind of a lot of stuff going on around that. And so I actually briefly switched to apparel technology as a major, which is Purdue's version of fashion design. And
Hmm.
because I sew really well, but it turns out after all these math and science classes, I can't draw to save my life. I flunked my first art class with flying colors. I mean, not even an F on the class. I think I got a Z. So that was kind of my wake up call that I did not have a future in fashion design. Um, so I, at that point, was just like, okay, I'm out of patience, I'm out of money, and I left and just started working. and had started working on personal computers and then started selling them. And that is what brought me to California. And I ended up working for a Fortune 500 computer manufacturer here and got laid off from there. And then about that time is when I went back to school to take some more programming classes because I was in Irvine and there's just a huge tech ecosystem in Irvine. And there were like 3 columns of job listings for Visual Basic programmers at the time. So I was like, well, I should go get one of those degrees and so or at least get the skills for it. So I did, and I worked and I was a software engineer and a senior data architect and then got hit by the dot-com bust. And at the time, did not yet have my bachelor's degree, and everybody was getting laid off. And the few people who were getting hired, they literally would not even look at your resume if you didn't have a bachelor's degree in something on it. It could have been underwater basket weaving, but you just had to have a bachelor's degree in something. And I didn't have one. I was like, well, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I'm going to go do it in what I love. So I went back to school to study astrophysics and aerospace engineering.
Now, what took you to do? I mean, that's a bit of a shift from doing, working it with the dot-com and then the dot-com bust and doing a lot of programming and software. What took you into the direction of doing astrophysics and more in the airplane arena?
Well, it's not the airplane arena, it's the rocket arena.
All
Um,
right, even cooler, the rocket arena.
um, my heart has always belonged to space. I mean, I grew up at the space race, and the space shuttle first flew the spring of my senior year in high school. So now we all know how old I am, or what my age is. And I've always loved it. And my high school, and I hated my high school with every breath in my body and still do,
Hmm.
but it had a planetarium in it of all things. And we only moved into the school system right before I started eighth grade. And so then I go to high school there and I find out that it's got a planetarium in it. And so I take this astronomy class spring of my sophomore year in high school. And I'm like, oh my God, is this it? This is just it. And we lived kind of out in the country. And so, when the weather wasn't terrible, we had these really clear, pretty dark skies. And I just developed this mad, passionate love affair with the night sky. And so that's why I went to Purdue to study physics because I wanted to study astrophysics. And if it weren't for some of the health problems that inspired this app, I would have a PhD in astrophysics and be sitting on a mountaintop, staring through a telescope. But
Hmm.
life is what happens when you're busy making other plans.
No, definitely makes sense. So you now maybe there wasn't any intern, but you mentioned a health issue, but you did go and study and get the degree in astrophysics. Now, did you come out and start working for, working on rockets and sending people to the moon, or making or doing something of that nature, or did the health issues impact or change the trajectory, or fill that in a little bit for us?
Um, at the time, I had not yet had my back fixed, which is I was hit in 4 car accidents from 1986 to 2004, and they really and none of those were my fault. They really did a number on my back. So, but at the time that I got my degree, I did not yet have my back fixed, which got done 4 years ago, and I'm a whole new person. But that really precluded me from going to work in an office. I just couldn't handle the sitting all day. So I started my own business doing astronomy and space events, and tutored. I tutored physics, math, and chemistry for several years for students out of some predominantly private high schools in the San Diego area, and enjoyed that immensely. And was actually sitting on my sofa recovering from a torn rotator cuff surgery about 4.5 years ago. This is before I got my back fixed, and realized that nobody was checking on me as often as maybe I thought that they should have. And I was like, there should be an app for that. And since I'm a former software engineer and a senior data architect, I was like, I know I could do this and I know that this technology exists. And so I
Hmm.
just started down that road of developing this app.
No, sounds like it was a good trajectory, or at least something that was gave you the ability to utilize some of the resources and the knowledge that you gained in dealing with those health issues. So now walk us through kind of, you said, okay, you have an idea for an app, kind of put you on that trajectory now, or how did you go, taking an idea and actually building something around it or developing it and getting out in the marketplace, which I think, you're just coming out of beta testing, but walk us through a little bit as to how that evolved or how you got started and kind of where things progressed to.
Well, I was living in Oceanside, California at the time, and I really liked Oceanside. It's famous for marines and tacos and surfing, though, not really technology. And so I wanted to get started on the app, but I did not know how. I didn't even know where to turn to find out how. And so I ended up moving back to Orange County about a year later and moved into South Orange County, which is where the huge tech ecosystem is that is centered on Irvine. And I was driving to the Irvine Costco one day, and I'm driving along all these streets that I used to work on and in the early 1990s. And I was like, oh, wait, I used to work on these streets, and it just hit me that everything and everyone that I would need to help me get this app developed was right there in my backyard. So I got busy on Meetup and I started looking for Meetup groups on, software and user interface design and databases. And, one thing led to another. And I ended up talking, coincidentally to an IP attorney.
Hmm.
And uh, he did this webinar on IP and I got off that webinar and I was like, I got to talk to you yesterday because I knew I had a good idea, but I didn't know how to protect it from being stolen. So I talked to him and we immediately filed a provisional patent application and it went from there. And I just immersed myself in the local tech ecosystem. And I've joked recently that I've kind of been drinking from a fire hose for the past 3 years. And have developed an entirely new vocabulary. I now can tell you what a convertible note is and what a safe is and about various kinds of IP and just a whole new vocabulary that I never had before, but I've enjoyed it a lot and I guess I'm doing a good job of preventing Alzheimer's at this point.
No, that's awesome. So now catching up, kind of to where things are at today. So you've got to work on the app, developing it. I think you're now coming out of beta. And so if you were to say, okay, kind of coming out of beta, now looking the kind of the next, 6 to 12 months as you, further pursue it, kind of where do you see this next 6 to 12 months headed for you?
Well, we've been out of beta. We've been out of beta for a while. We made
Okay.
a decision about 2 months ago to uh, change the user interface to it and to collect all the data that you would find on a standard patient intake form. And we filed a provisional patent application for this as well. But to collect all the data that is on a standard patient intake form that you would find at the hospital or any doctor's office. And we are then making that information. I actually just had a meeting with my developer last night and we're going to make it so that that information can be shared with your emergency contacts or with healthcare providers. And you can choose line by line which of that information you want shared, and you get to choose which of your emergency contacts you can share it with. And then we are looking at, again, patent application filed on this one. We are looking at a proprietary way of sharing that information electronically so that it would interface directly with any of your standard electronic health record systems out there like Epic and MyChart and Follow My Health, etc.
Hmm. Well, that's
So
awesome.
that's what
No,
we're
so
doing right now.
Now, and just to follow up, so you say that's what you're doing right now. So where does that put you out in the next, 6 to 12 months as you continue to work on that?
Well, I'm waiting for one little tiny bug to be fixed, which my developer assured me would be done by Wednesday. And then it's market. About just a little over 2 months ago, I issued a press release on being getting into the Pepperdine University Most Fundable Companies round two, and I got a grade of B, which stood for great potential. And so I did a press release on that. And I woke up 2 days later to emails from the Business Today show with Bill and Juliana Rancic inviting me to be on the show. So that taping will be November 19th in Chicago. And so we're, as a team, kind of collectively working against having the app, um, not just up and running, which it already is, but perfect and, a large user base, et cetera, between now and then.
Well, sounds like it'll be a fun next few months for you guys. Plenty to keep you busy and hopefully get some great traction and success. So well, awesome. Well, kind of with that, now as we've reached a bit of the present day of the journey and kind of where things are headed, great time to transition to the two questions I always like to ask towards the end of each episode. So we're going to jump to that now. So the first question I'd like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? And what did you learn from it?
Are those the two questions?
That would be one question,
Oh, that's
two-part
one
question, but
question.
that's the first
Okay.
question. Yep.
The worst decision that I made was trying to develop the app myself. I am, with my technical background, I know that I can do it. As the CEO and the janitor and the bookkeeper and the everything else that goes into being a small business owner, there's only so many hours in the day. And at the behest, after I got the user interface developed, at the behest of a longtime friend of mine who has known me as a programmer and a data architect, and actually as a physics student, um, he's like, you can develop this app yourself. And so I actually started down that road. And about 6 months into it, I realized that I had written about 3 lines of code and said, huh, okay, so if I keep going at this rate, this is going to get done the second Tuesday after I die. Um, I should hire somebody to do it. And that's when I found a developer to do it, and I just outsourced it to him. What I learned from the experience was that when you are the founder of a company, be it a small, a regular small business, a tech startup, whatever it is, you have a million and one hats to wear, and you need to figure out what you can delegate. Yes, maybe you're smart enough to do everything, but do you have enough time in the day and enough hours to do all of the things? And, even if it costs some money, what is your time worth and what is that lost market opportunity cost by you not having, your idea out on the market 6 months sooner than it could have been because you delayed hiring somebody to delegate it to.
Yeah, and that one is, it's always the trade-off, right? You could maybe do it yourself. On the other hand, you have to say, will I do it myself? Is it where I could add the most value? And it's also competing. You have budgets, and you're saying, can I afford to bring someone else on? Do I want that obligation? Is this something that's going to take off? And so it's, all of those kind of competing interests. So sometimes you make the right balance or the right decision, otherwise, or other times you get a course correct or otherwise adjust it. So it sounds like that was certainly an easy mistake to make, but a great one to learn from. Second question now that I'd like to ask. So now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one rule of thumb you'd recommend?
Don't plan on having any work-life balance. You know, I and I've heard this from a lot of other startups and a lot of other small businesses. I think somebody fairly famous said that. It just it's I do have a couple of things that I dig my heels in about. My birthday is one of them, Christmas is one of them. Um, there's a couple others, but most of my social life revolves around going to conferences or networking events. And I work a lot of weekends. I work till 3 o'clock in the morning most of the time. It's that astrophysicist in me makes me a chronic night owl. Uh, and you know, but I love what I'm doing. I love what I would not work this hard for something that I didn't believe in this much, and I wouldn't enjoy it. And there's a lot of things that I do that I don't enjoy, taxes, EDD filings, SEC paperwork, who likes that stuff, right? None of that is the reason why you became a small business owner. Um, but you work a lot and you have to accept that you're just not going to have much life. You're not going to take off on vacations and go to Europe while you're building your business, unless you want it to fail.
Yeah, no, it is one where, now probably you want that a sense of night being naive when you go into it. And I think everybody is in the sense of the time, money, and effort, budgets, and everything that goes into a startup. If you ever realize that on the front end, no matter how much you love it, you'd probably run away, screaming type of a thing. You're terrified. But there is that, having that realistic expectation. One, you better love it because you're going to be devoting a large amount of time to it, especially on the front end and for a considerable amount of time. Now, my experience, limit as it is, at some point you can start to be able to step back, or as you grow the team and get traction and get to a point of success, that you might be able to find that balance. But you certainly better be, going in eyes wide open that for a considerable amount of time it's going to be pretty consuming, and you're going to have to be willing to devote that, or realize it on the front end and say that might not be for you. So I definitely think that's a great rule of thumb and a great takeaway. Well, now as we are do wrap towards the end of the podcast, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
My email address is founder, FOUNDER, at lifebackupplan.com. My phone is practically glued to my body, and I'm really good at responding to emails, not necessarily ones where you're trying to sell me something, but if you're an investor or you want more information about the app and using it and stuff. And I should also add, we in the last 3 months kind of also shifted our marketing direction, and we're not just going after seniors and women, et cetera, anymore. We're now marketing the app as something for hospitals and surgeons to use for post-discharge monitoring, and to employers to use to lower their healthcare costs, and small towns and for rural health, et cetera. So, if you're one of those organizations that would like to lower your healthcare costs, or talk to me about post-discharge monitoring for your patients and getting better information for your JCO reviews and lowering fines from CMS, call me 858-848-0860.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, support a great business, expand their network, and if nothing else, make a new best friend. So, with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast, Andy. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of your good listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. Just go to inventiveunicorn.com, apply to be on the show. A couple more things as listeners. Make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And along that note, if along your journey you ever need help with patents or trademarks or anything else with your startup or your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Sandy, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you, Devin. It was great being here. You have a great day.